Oh, funny story about this. So as I was doing the final editing on my ECG/LCG video, Fantasy Flight Games put out an announcement that they were going to be doing a revised version of the Arkham Horror core set, which comes in a nice storage box with full playset. I guess they were so scared of my video, so affected by it, that they had to put out this announcement 3 days before it even came out. But I jest. That still doesn't really change a lot of the things I said in my video. What that means is that a lot of people have been saying the same thing about Fantasy Flight's games. They've been saying these things for years, and Fantasy Flight, in this announcement, is finally acknowledging that they needed to make a change. Although there's a bit more going on there than that I'll get into first. So, first of all, let's talk about Arkham Horror a little bit. It is a game where you build a deck where you play as a sort of detective investigator, somebody who's gotten involved with the strange and the occult, and you go and you investigate a campaign. So let me get these cards over here. I have the this card storage box. I actually got it in the used bundle with the core set. What the game does is you build a deck, and it's a co-op game. It's a cooperative game where you explore a like a haunted house or something, or investigate the city streets to track down cult members. What I have here is actually the Return to the Night of the Zealot. Night of the Zealot is a 3-chapter campaign. It's a 3-chapter campaign that comes in the core set. This storage box here, it's not just a storage box. It is actually it's actually a sort of remix box. What it does is it takes the campaign from the core set and changes the rules. It adds new circumstances, new rooms, new encounters. It's basically a way to spice up Arkham Horror's core loop. And what Arkham Horror's loop is after the campaign in the core set is what you do is you buy like a larger sort of box, which is kind of similar in size to this one, which contains the core components for a start of a new campaign. It contains a ton of like enemy and resource and encounter area cards, and maybe some new cards to play around with. But what that big box does is it includes a lot of the cards that then get recycled in later chapters that come out in monthly packs. And something that I failed to bring up, but somebody else brought up regarding these packs is, that's the thing about ECG packs, is if you're going to sell somebody a pack of the cards, it might as well be a complete playset with every playable copy of that card. I'll get back to this and how it fails to do that later. But what somebody pointed out is that sets this small, that are like 20 different cards, have a nasty habit of not really being able to move the needle in the game competitively, because each deck gets like 1, maybe 2 new cards to play around with, and that kind of like I said, it's that low annual content that might disappoint people. A trading card game, because they can allow somebody to piecemeal acquire what parts, what components of a massive set that they want through the ability to buy like smaller packs and, you know, trade for stuff like that, means that they can afford to put out a huge set. An ECG product it cannot be paradoxically so large that it costs an arm and a leg to buy, while also being so small that it doesn't really move the needle gameplay-wise. A lot of games like Ashes, like what I have here, what they do is they put out decks, basically. This is like a fancy, like, one-player set that contains a deck, the required dice. Not all of them contain the dice. The Ashes box contains 4 players worth of dice, but the regular decks are only $15. They only contain the cards. This one contains, as well, it's twice as much, but also contains a dice and a deck box, although when people think deck box, they think something like this, like a tiny little thing to stash the cards in, but they're really not advertising this thing properly, because the deck box inside of this thing fills this package stem to stern. It's more like, I don't know, like a clutch or something. Like, this is something that goes under your arm, and it's designed this way because not only does it stash the cards, it also stashes the dice. These go flush against the lid so they stay in place. These weren't even wrapped out of here. And of course we have the token tray where you can take the tokens from the core set and stash them in here. We have a larger tray to stash the deck sleeved up, a bit of space for a side deck. It's a pretty impressive piece of kit, and this combined with the dice, I'd say, makes it definitely closer to the higher price they're asking. This is basically a one-player starter set that anybody can bring to join a group without having to reach into the collective dice pool. But back to Arkham Horror. This is actually an example of a standalone scenario pack. This is the Labyrinths of Lunacy. It is a it was actually a print-on-demand special put out for Arkham Knights 2017. What it is a standalone 3-chapter campaign. It doesn't include any of the cards that go into players' decks. Instead, it is just the campaign cards. You can play the 3 campaigns separately, but you can also play all of the campaigns simultaneously with up to 12 people. It's basically something to host an event. But a normal pack for Arkham Horror comes in a pack like this, and it's like half player cards, half cards for the next chapter, while also recycling a bunch of cards from the core set, from the larger starter set. But back to the starter set. The big problem with the starter set is out of the 234 cards included in this set, 70 of them, the ones that you use to build the player decks with, fail to include duplicate copies. You're allowed to have up to 2 copies of any card in your deck, but for some reason the core set only includes 1 copy of each of these special investigator deck class cards. And what happens is you have an investigator, and they have like a primary class, but they also have a secondary class that you build your deck with. And like if I wanted to play as the detective, he uses all of the guardian cards, which have a police badge on them, and all of the investigator cards, all the researcher cards, which have a globe on them. So he's like an investigative detective, so he knows how to get his way through a fight, but he also knows how to look for clues. The thing is, if I want to build that deck, I have to use all of the 0-pip guardian and detective cards and investigator cards, researcher cards out of the entire stack. I would have to use all of them, which means that if I pick one of the 5 characters, if I pick the detective, then I have locked my friend out of being able to play the researcher character and the rogue character, because they also need these cards from out of the deck, and they are no longer available. So it kind of damages a lot of the fun when you cannot play as, like, I cannot play as both the detective and the librarian at the same time, because they would share cards from the stack. Like I said, I opened up the possibility of introducing an LCG lunchbox of lore, something similar to this Legend of the Five Rings set, which contained just these cards, so that they could fill out a playset. It's like, ooh, we could play with the sort of limited experience by only having these cards available. But now that we're done with that, we can get the things that fill out the playsets, and we can now have all sorts of fun. I mean, nothing's stopping them from still putting that out, so that people who bought this basic core set can fill out their number without needing to spend a whole lot of extra money, make it like $15, $20, make it so that buying the bigger core set is a better deal. But here's the thing. Fantasy Flight has been doing this for ages. It is something that a lot of people have criticized them for. It's one of the reasons I brought it up, and it's one of the reasons they made these major changes before I even talked about them. The thing about these games, like having to buy like 2-3 copies, the big thing is it generates a lot of waste. You know, you only need about 70 cards for duplicates, but the rest of the box, everything just goes to waste. Like, you don't need a second set of the campaign cards. You don't need a second set of madness tokens. You don't really need a second set of like the damage counters and the stuff like that. You only need those extra 70 cards, and so everything else in this box goes to waste. It's the fact that it costs $80 essentially to do this, and now, or actually $90. This one's a $45 set. It would have been $90, now it's down to $60. That's $30 savings. A lot of it is just that hideous waste. And because it's an ECG, nobody else is going to need those campaign cards or any of those things. But the first real shift was not this Arkham Horror box. It was actually Marvel Champions. Fantasy Flight was listening to these people for years and years and years. Oh, put out a better box and full playset, and they were finally like, fine! Put your money where your mouth is. Marvel Champions is coming out. I hope you're not afraid of the $60 price tag. And everybody was like, we're not. So Marvel Champions actually has a pretty interesting box inside of it. it has a tray that actually has these sorts of like slots in there. It kind of looks like a Ruffles has ridges shape. What you're supposed to do is take the large like top loader sleeves, like the big hard plastic sleeves, and insert them into those, those ridges there to act as dividers. So you have a way to divide the cards inside there. Another thing that I kind of got wrong was, does the box contain full playset? The thing is, I went over like a listing of the contents of the box, and I saw that there were cards with 3 copies in there, but there were also cards with like only 2 copies in there, so I thought maybe they were incomplete. But people are saying to me, oh no, actually those are complete playsets. Those are only supposed to only have 2 copies of those cards in there. At the end of the day, the thing that matters most is that you can simultaneously play as all of the characters in the box. Sure, some of the characters kind of share some cards, but there are enough copies between all of the characters that you can play as everybody. So it does not have the problem of this core set. If you want to have somebody who plays as Spider-Man and another person wants to play Black Panther, they're not going to be fighting over cards. So that wound up doing gangbusters for them. Marvel Champions is little more than Sentinels of the Multiverse with a Marvel coating over it, but it has still been a phenomenally successful game. Partly because it's Marvel, although Fantasy Flight specializes in licensing games, like they have the Game of Thrones game. And funnily enough, Legend of the Five Rings is also licensed, although starting this July, starting this month, it is having its last expansion. It has been canceled, and as a result, there will soon be 0 competitive LCGs. There will be absolutely none of them. Although I don't think I can blame Fantasy Flight for the end of the Game of Thrones game. But yeah, Lord of the Rings is campaign-based, Arkham Horror is campaign-based, Marvel Champions is campaign-based, and that's fine. Like I said, ECGs can do stuff like that. Having a campaign that has like an ongoing story where you can release the new chapter every month and people can get excited for that. It's like, ooh, got some new cards, got a new adventure. That actually works really well. The fact that Arkham Horror is going to a full-on core set, to my understanding, they're not just going to maximize the playsets of the Investigator cards, they're also going to up the contents of the Universal cards. The Universal cards contain just enough that they can stretch out the cards in this deck to be usable for 2 players. Apparently it's going to be, the new Arkham Horror set is going to be like Marvel Champions in that every character can be used simultaneously, or at least 4 of them can be used simultaneously. That's a huge change. That means that it can finally live up to what's been going on. I think part of that is because they have some competition. We, of course, have the World of Darkness Vampire Rivals game that just came out. This is kind of similar to the box you see for like Marvel Champions and I assume Arkham Horror. This has been making a lot of waves. World of Darkness in general has been making some waves lately. We, of course, have Ashes Reborn, but more threatening, we are going to have from the same makers the Summoner Wars 2.0, which I believe also comes out this month. So Fantasy Flight's having to get it in gear because they're going to be having some more fierce competition going forward. Although, my biggest question about the new Arkham Horror core set is, are the slugs going to contain the directional tokens? Like, you saw when I set up the little map in Arkham Horror where I made that joke about, yes, I legitimately made the mistake that I thought that the Arkham Horror board game was the card game. It's because it's called Arkham Horror. When I typed in Arkham Horror card game, this is what came up, and they are ludicrously similar. Yes, I made that mistake. I was originally going to cut it entirely, but I thought the idea that I had been, like, tricked, deceived by some sort of ancient, evil force into believing that these games are the same thing. That joke was just too tempting. But when I set up the board, I had these little roads here, these little arrows that tell you how you can move. Like, the cards are able to move between cards, and so there's a little secondary market for people who have these little lines to tell you what places you're allowed to move between. I know they're going to be having, like, some new, like, resource tokens on the slugs. A slug is the term for, the little token sheets you get in the boxes. At least it's I don't know if it's the industry term. I know it's the game crafter term. But these little arrows are pretty popular, and they're really important because they can tell you how you can move so that you don't accidentally go from your house to the graveyard, because you actually can't do that in the core campaign. If they have, like, these little arrow pointers on the slugs, I think that would make a huge, 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 huge difference. Anyway, moving on. In general, expandable card games. There's a lot of it. Like I said, my biggest problem with Fantasy Flight, I didn't criticize their games. I think Arkham Horror, the card game, is actually really good. What I criticized was their business model, how they trademarked the name of a genre, and how they released kind of lackluster introductory product. I mean, I thought the whole point of these things was that you don't have to buy product repeatedly, you just buy it once and you're done, except for the core sets. That's changed though, so now it's not the problem that it was before. And I know I talked a lot about having like a nice box. I mean, I'm not like the kind of guy who just lets their tokens go loose if there isn't a good organizer in there. I have certainly discovered the joy that is the portion pack, but I don't like having to juggle around so many bags at the start of the day. So something like with Ashes Are Born, where everything gets pushed nice and solid against the brim, that just saves me a lot. So does including deck bags. Ashes Are Born also had the deck bags in there. Rivals I think had the deck bags as well, except I think because of the storage I did some other things. But yeah, it's a viable model. I'd love to see more games that entertain like the Arkham Horror design, where it is like a subscription where you sign up and you get like a new adventure every month. I mean, it's not much of an adventure. It's part of an ongoing chapter. That is why they do like these box sets that are like the remix sets at the end, is so that you can play through the adventure again but have a whole new experience. That's pretty neat. But another thing that came up about, trading card games is a lot of people are saying, oh, well, I think the reason I harped on the ethical thing so much was because so many people, that's all they really see it as. It's like, oh, it's a trading card game, but it doesn't have booster packs, so I don't have to, spend time or money, trading and getting the things I really want. I think it's because people get kind of high and mighty about that. That's maybe the reason I don't really get onto it. It's like, oh yeah, well my game doesn't have booster packs, and I'm like, yeah, well neither does Uno. You still have to make a good game. So promoting that understanding that it really is a different kind of thing that you're maneuvering around. You are having to be, careful with your development, figuring out how you're going to be doing all of that. It's not as simple as just a game without booster packs, because thanks to booster packs with trading card games, I mean, you already have draft play, obviously, but you can also, distribute just absolutely massive sets, but people have the easy freedom to only acquire what they want out of those sets, and, exchange with others to get what they want. Versus with an ECG, if you traded cards with ECG cards, that's technically breaking the set. But moving on, yes, there are certainly cases, I know especially right now with how things have been going, where trading card games can be kind of exploited. I mean, I whipped out like the fly swatter over what Magic has been doing with their set boosters, where they're designed to have like occasional big hits like a gacha game, and I didn't like that. I know it can seem like Yu-Gi-Oh! Is using Japan as a test bed to tell them what cards to spike the rarity on in the international release. Flesh and Blood's legendary rares, even if you only need one of them, the fact that they're only like 1 in 4 boxes is kind of nasty. But here's the thing, is by being kind of selfish like that, they are opening themselves up to any kind of newcomer who's like, hey guys, in our game you get 2 rares per booster pack, and you don't have to get full play sets of the top rarity cards in order to be competitive. You need maybe 2 copies of one card. You look at the Digimon TCG, which has been doing really well. I know there's Lucimon right now, which is causing some trouble, but every deck I've seen only runs 2 copies of him in a playset 4. It's something I went over in my Rarity Iceberg story, is I advocated against, better cards are the cards that go at the top rarity, or the cards that are more useful, more powerful, more cost-effective. Those are the ones that go at the top rarity. I'm like, no, what you want is cards at all rarities that are useful, but the ones at the top rarity are like the keystones that pull the strategy together. That combination of cards from all rarities brought together by the top rarity cards. So you don't have to like build a deck that's like 90-100% top rarity cards, and the cards with a solid meta will swirl around and get to the players who want them. Like, you pull a good card, but you don't need it. You can easily swap it with a friend who has the card you want and needs what you got. So a game with a more, a less stingy rarity system, a better calibrated rarity system like the one I talked about in my Rarity Iceberg video that is a lot more forthcoming with the things players need to play. There's an open room for that. I think in general there is a solid hunger for new experiences. I know right now there's a bubble. In a previous video I did, I already said I cannot wait for that bubble to pop so we can just have fun playing card games again. A lot of the inflation on card game price is because of that bubble, and I really hope it goes away. Although, speaking of card games, the Kodak box of junk sold out in 12 hours. I shipped as many as I could out the next day. Some of them have already arrived, and that's kind of the general theme. Is I know a lot of you guys, you like to look at card games, learn about new card games. The point is, it's not going to be something where I like dump my old Magic cards in. No. It's not going to be like card games that are easy to get. There's not really going to be like Magic or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh cards in there, because those are all really easy to get basically anywhere. If they are in there, I think of all of the big three combined, there's only like 4 or 5 cards in there. But the rule I have set is to put cards from more popular games in there. There has to be something unusual about them. Like, the Pokemon cards in there include, like, a movie promo and a league promo, and a foil card. I think the Yu-Gi-Oh card I put in, it has to be, like, an exceptionally old normal monster. Like, if I got, like, a box of Magic the Gathering Mirage, like, cards that are, like, over 20 years old, heck yes, I would include those in the box of awesome, but I'm not just gonna throw, like, any old cards in there. I've actually already gotten a couple people who are interested in contributing cards. One of them is actually, you saw them on the channel. It's Redemption. They're actually going to be tossing in some cards. That's going to be fun. But like I said, the point is to learn about and explore and discover fun games that you might not have heard of. Like, how many of you guys have even heard of Crusaders of Lornia? I know I hadn't until I actually found it on some obscure game store, and I think this store was on the ground level of this game because they had t-shirts. After I've bought my fill, I guess I'll, to use for the boxes of awesome, I guess I'll post a link to what I found. It's a fascinating little thing. But yeah, it is perfectly possible to make, like, I almost forgot about this, but yeah, you look at a game like Force of Will. Like, I bought this booster box to show off exclusively on the iceberg, the Building Better Boosters video, but I basically got a complete set of Curse of the Frozen Casket in this one little box. Granted, I got the assistance of a God pack, but, and I only got 2 of the 5J rulers. To my understanding, that's how every box works. But yeah, in one box, I got nearly everything I needed to play, and with a little exchanging from 1 or 2 people who also bought a box, I could build basically any deck I want from this set. That is a totally viable way to build a trading card game, and it's one that companies have been using to get people into their game because Pokemon and Magic have gone off the deep end. Another thing I do have to bring up is I talked about how these tiny packs struggle with card games because they don't really move the needle so much aside from the subscription ones. Just because your booster sets are small doesn't necessarily mean that they won't do anything. Like, 2 of my favorite expansions of all time are for the game Munchkin, and they are Munchkin Fairy Dust and Munchkinomicon. These are tiny. These came in a booster pack. However, what they do is they create like a little side deck of cards, and they change the dynamic of how the game goes. Munchkin Fairy Dust is a set where you have a little set of rewards that you get for helping out a player in a fight for no reward. Like in Munchkin, like, you can say, hey, somebody help me out here, and somebody can say, okay, I'll help you for both of the treasures that monster is about to drop. If Munchkin Fairy Dust, you say, oh, no, I'll just help you out, you know, you get something from this stack instead. So this set encourages cooperation. The Munchkinomicon, however, is a book that, you know, there's only one book, and every turn it gives whoever has it, like, a really cool and powerful spell. So other people on the table will want to get their hands on this book, and the book has a list of ways that you can take it from other players. So this one actually discourages cooperation. So you have one that encourages cooperation, one that discourages cooperation. I don't really see too many Munchkin booster packs that are clever like this, but, you know, something that adds a little bit of spice to change things up really can have a powerful effect. Although, this is little... Let's have a little talk about the big one here, the Enchanters Deluxe Box. A hilarious thing about this Deluxe Box, it was a Kickstarter reward. 11.5 Yu-Gi-Oh decks for 1,104 cards if I include the rules and reminder pieces. Although, hilarious thing about this box, it plays kind of like Legendary, where you have you basically build like a core deck with like a few select decks out of here which contain like a random assortment of cards, although in this case the monsters are mixed into that deck as well. One of the backer rewards, the stretch goals, was that they would have like premium plastic tokens for like the damage and stuff that normally would be done in cardboard, but this was not instead of the cardboard. This was in addition to the cardboards, as well as neoprene mats that replaced the little cardboard track token. So that means this big ol' Enchanters box can support 2 simultaneous games of Enchanters. I just think that's wild. But anyway, I am currently debating between 2 possible future scripts. Please let me know in the comments which one you think is more. I have one that would be about, art direction and aesthetic design, and another one that would be about organized play. Oh, that's something I forgot to talk about. I've been acquiring lots of stuff for organized play, like some old organized play kits that didn't get used. So for the next batch, which I have also already put a bunch of down payments on with the money I made from the first batch, a much larger one, there's going to be like organized play promo cards in there, like a ton of them. That's going to be so cool. So anyway, let me know which of these 2 ideas you want me to talk about next, and until next time, this is Kodak signing off. Man, it is hot right now.